In Elizabethtown, Kentucky, June 26th of 2023, Ashley Henning celebrated her 37th birthday. And after a party with friends, her husband Jordan shot her to death on camera. Prosecutors said Jordan Henning harbored hatred in his heart for his wife, and they charged him with first-degree intentional murder. Jordan Henning took the stand in his own defense at trial and described enduring years of abuse at the hands of his wife. And in a shocking verdict, the jury seemed to believe him, convicting him of only the lesser included charge of first-degree manslaughter and sentencing him to 20 years in prison. Tonight, we'll show you the dramatic reaction to the end of this tragic case. And it was the biggest trial Dedham, Massachusetts had ever seen. A woman accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend with her SUV after a night out drinking. But Karen Reed says she was framed. Then, when the jury couldn't reach a verdict on all three charges against her, the judge declared a mistrial. And now Karen Reed is preparing for her second trial. And today, a judge has ruled that communications Reed had with controversial blogger known as Turtleboy are fair game for prosecutors to access. We'll break down what it all means and figure out how it might impact Karen Reed's murder retrial. But first, 13-year-old Madeline Soto was reported missing in February of 2024. 5 days later, her body was found in a remote area of Osceola County, Florida. She had been strangled to death. The investigation led to her mother's boyfriend, Stephan Sterns. It also revealed that Sterns had been sexually abusing Madeline for years. Now, Sterns is charged with first-degree murder, capital sexual battery, and possession of child sexual abuse material. He's currently awaiting 2 separate trials. And tonight, we're listening in on newly released jailhouse calls made by defendant Stephan Sterns himself. Get ready. Closing arguments starts right now. Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julia Janae filling in tonight for Vinnie Politan. Thank you for being with us. We're beginning this hour with new developments in a case that we've been following closely here at Court TV since February of last year. That's when 13-year-old Madeline Soto was reported missing. The search for the Florida teen gained national attention. It wasn't until after 5 days that the news was released that no one wanted to hear. It finally broke that Madeline's remains had been discovered. And they were discovered in a remote location at the side of a road near St. Cloud, Florida. Madeline had been strangled, and on top of the horrible news that Madeline was dead, we then learned even more horrifying details about what prosecutors say her life was like while she was alive. Authorities say that the man who killed her was her mother's boyfriend, Stephan Sterns. They also say he had been sexually abusing her for years in the home that she shared with him and her mother. Now, Sterns is charged with murder and dozens of sex crimes against Madeline. And while he waits for 2 separate upcoming trials to begin, he is being housed in the Osceola County Jail in Florida. And he's also doing something else while he's there, not just eating his 3 hots, not just on his cot. He's also making a lot of phone calls. And those jailhouse phone calls, like most, are recorded. They let you know at the beginning that this is a recorded line. But it doesn't stop people from saying things that can sound incriminating. And tonight we have newly released calls between Stephan Sterns and his parents. And I want to start with one clip where this accused killer is talking to his parents, and he's talking about the discovery of Madeline Soto's dead body.
I had gone downstairs for a while, and by the time I realized anything was wrong, it was just far too late. You know, she'd been gone for a while.
Okay.
Just seeing her pale face and blue lips and how ice cold she was, and it's crazy.
That's gonna stay with you. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember seeing my brother when he had passed away, and that's the last thing I remember seeing of him. And so.
Yeah, it's just, you can tell.
yes, you can. My dad, yeah.
It's just, when they're gone, really, really, truly gone, there's nothing you can do. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
The they he's talking about there when he says they're gone is 13-year-old Madeline Soto. This information is surprising, it's sickening, but it's also really the first time we've heard from this defendant that he was at least around the body of Madeline Soto before it was discovered by authorities. We have someone here with us who can talk about all the details. He's been there to Osceola, Florida. We have Cody Thomas, our field reporter here at Court TV, who's going to help us break these things down. So, Cody, talk to me about these calls, because he's on the phone with his parents, right?
Absolutely, Julia. And there was almost 4 hours of these calls, newly released calls today. And these calls were in the months after he was arrested for this murder, May, June, in that time frame of last year. Now, one of the most important questions that his mother asked him on one of these jail phone calls, she asked him if he was abused growing up. And her line of thinking is because, you know, he's accused of sexually abusing Madeline, that sexual abusers are usually sometimes abused themselves. He kind of reassures her that neither her nor his father did any of that stuff to him growing up. But then she flat out asks him, "Are you attracted to kids?" To which he answered, "Not generally attracted to kids." And then he goes on to kind of backtrack himself on this call with his parents, pretty much saying he doesn't want to incriminate himself. Take a listen to this portion.
Just that, you know, they say that sometimes when you know, like children, that you have been an abused child, and it was intimated that perhaps we had abused you in some way.
No, he has never did. And strictly speaking, I'm not actually into younger people like that. As you know, I don't even like most kids, so I mean, it's hard to feel a generalized attraction towards any of them.
Was it just her, or was it other people as well?
I can't get into specific details, but no, it was not a thing with anybody. It was
All right, got it.
But I don't want to get too much into details or
Yeah, I know.
confirm or deny anything officially, anything that could possibly be used against me. I mean, I haven't seen the inside of a courtroom yet, so it would be kind of stupid to be making anything that could be construed as an admission of guilt.
And Julia, you heard it there, that pause, assumed to be the names of maybe Madeline or even other minors that he might have mentioned to his parents. But as you were listening, it didn't really sound like a complete no to him being attracted to children or kids. And we also know, you know, he's facing up to or more than 60 plus counts of sexual abuse, and he has a trial coming up for that in May.
I can't believe how calm, how normal they are sounding when they're talking about this, how casual, I guess is the word. But it seems like his mother is struggling with it, like she's trying to get some kind of explanation as to why her son could have done this, but maybe even to cover their own bases, make sure they are not being implicated at all. Tell me what else you found in these calls.
So then he ends up mentioning in another portion of these hours of released phone calls, he ends up mentioning Jen Soto, Madeline's mother. Now he talks about in this portion, everyone's suffering due to Madeline being found dead, including himself. He talks about how, even goes on to sort of defend Jen Soto in her actions and feelings, you know, in some of those interrogations, pretty much saying that her whole world has been turned upside down because of this. She's lost her daughter now, and, you know, this is just a traumatic experience. Take a listen to this part.
Some of the nurses or officers were talking to each other like, let's just take the day off today. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. You know what, guys? Let's all just take the day off today and come back tomorrow. Well, you know, that would be counterproductive because they want people to suffer. Because suffer. Yeah. If I went home, that'd be, you know, too tempting for me to do something and not go to trial, probably. So they want to make sure that they have their eyes on me at all times. But, you know, it's like, I wouldn't waste too much energy having any sort of grudge or hurt feelings against her. She's suffering, too, in her own way, so. Well, you know, she lost her daughter. And her whole world was turned upside down, too. You know? Yeah, but everyone's world got turned upside down by this. No one is having a good time here.
So, Julie, you heard it there. No one is having a good time here. But as I was listening, I find it odd that he's speaking in this way, considering he's the one currently behind bars charged with her murder. The way he's speaking this way.
Exactly. Correct. And when you hear him talking there, it almost sounds like he's delusional about what situation he's in. Is there anything that you're hearing from him in these calls so far? I know you're still digging through them, and we're going to have more coming up later, but anything where he's showing that he understands the gravity of the situation?
So he ends up talking about potential sentences, and we know in the murder case, not the sex abuse case, but the murder case for Madeline, that he is facing the death penalty. And he actually mentions that to his parents, and he talks in a way that as if he's kind of accepting the very possible reality that he could be sentenced to death. Take a listen.
Murder one is about as bad as it can get, and the death penalty is about as extreme as it can go. I don't even know what method they use down here. Oh, I guess that's not so bad, right? You go to sleep and then you go to heaven.
Go to sleep and go to heaven. Like you said, he's sounding very calm, understanding that he could possibly die due to these crimes. And of course, that trial is set for September of this year, Julia. And again, like you said, we got hours upon hours more of these phone calls to go through. But on Monday night on Vinnie Politan Investigates, we will have a huge extravaganza going through more of these calls, the rest of these calls. So we'll have a whole lot to blow up on Monday about this.
Field reporter Cody Thomas, thank you so much for breaking all of that down. I can't wait to talk about it with our think tank, so let's bring them in. Tonight, we have former senior homicide prosecutor and founder of the Villalona Law Firm, Bernardo Villalona, is with us. Also with us, the chief public defender for Oakland County, Michigan. She represented the Oxford High School shooter. Paulette Lofton is here. And we also have trial attorney, big case Michael Jafer, with us as well. Thank you all for being here. This case continues to, it seems impossible that it can get sicker as we hear from more about Stephan Sterns, but I think we're there. And Bernardo, let me just start with you, because we're hearing these calls, and I'm gonna start with that first one, where he is saying the explosive thing of him understanding that Madeline was gone, that her lips were blue, that she was pale, she was cold to the touch. What do you think when you hear this statement by itself? What kind of evidence could this be used for?
Well, definitely to show that he had knowledge that she had passed, that she was killed, of her whereabouts. And the question will be, well, how do you know that information? When was it that you saw her? Why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you call 911? So all these questions are questions that the jury's going to have. So it puts a tough question in front of the defense. And that is whether the defendant is going to have to testify in order to explain these questions, explain that conversation that he had over the phone. So the defense is now in a tough position, because now it's fair game in terms of the prosecution being able to use these recorded calls that came from his mouth.
Yeah, Paulette, do you think that he is there creating some kind of defense, or at least an excuse in front of his parents, that perhaps he did the disposal of the body, but he didn't cause the death? Because in other parts of that call, he says that he wishes he had called police instead of what he did. He wishes he had woken up Jen Soto in that moment.
To create a new narrative. As a defense attorney, jail calls are just the worst to deal with, because they're so hard to defend, because he's talking to a family member. And even though the recording very often tells them that this is being recorded on the phone, you hear jail phone calls where they're just trying to have a conversation with their parents, and sometimes they're exposing their deepest, darkest secrets. And it seems like that's what's happening here. I think he's going to have a real problem, because in those first interviews with the news, when he sat down, he said he had absolutely no idea what happened. The last time he saw her was when he dropped her off at school. So now the jury is going to hear this. So what's the truth?
I can see the prosecution comparing these, using them side by side in an opening statement even. Let's talk about the next call. Michael Jafer, there was one where he said we're all suffering here. He talks about Jen, doesn't implicate her at all in this, but he says we're all suffering. This has just turned everyone's life upside down. Do you think the prosecution can get in a call like that? And if they can, how's the jury going to react to it?
I think they absolutely could get in a call like that, because I don't think, I think I don't think the prejudicial value outweighs its probative value. But what I also see in these calls, and especially with that calls, I have a theory. I think Stephan Sterns thinks that his parents are both idiots. And I think that he is more so defending himself from stupid statements that might come from his parents. If we recall, his dad was the person who volunteered his hard drive to the police they didn't even know existed. And his mom sent him a letter intimating that, hey, why are you suffering? Other people should also be suffering. And she kind of implicated him in doing it as well. Hey, you always know your customer, right? You're a parent, you know your kid. They know their kid. They clearly, proudly believe that their kid is a creep, but their kid they believe is a creep. But he maybe was one of those wily, smart creeps who knows how to basically, manipulate them and kind of defending himself from them making stupid statements when he's on a call with them. I don't know, but this guy is a weird, creepy person. He's had a creepy background. His parents are creepy. So I think the prosecutors can bring this in, but it's going to have to be brought in with a whole I think all his jailhouse calls are going to be brought in, except for the ones with his attorneys.
Well, you're right. It is very odd the way he's talking to his parents, and it sounds like they could even be motivated for justice for Madeline if they're asking about other victims, other potential victims. We have to take a break. Think Tank, thank you for your analysis on that case. We have a lot to get to, though, this hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about the latest from the upcoming retrial of Karen Read. Big moments that are coming out today in motions. Plus, here's a look at what's coming up in the next hour on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Wendy Adelson has already testified in 3 trials connected to the shooting death of her ex-husband, law professor Dan Markell, including testifying for the state in the trial against her own brother. Now, Wendy's mother, Donna Adelson, will stand trial for her role in the conspiracy. And again, Wendy is on the witness list. What will Wendy testify to this time at her mother's trial? We investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
You feel that? The NWSL is on ION.
It's game time. Showing off a little skill now.
The new Saturday Night Out is on ION all season long. Find ION wherever you watch.
ION, it's on.
First, this is a ruling with Mr. Carney, so I'm asking that Mr. Carney and his attorney be at the table. I'm not sure why we're being joined by Ms. Reed's team.
This is her case.
I don't know that that's, yes, it is her case, but what standing does she have to challenge a Rule 17 request related to documents produced in another case?
Because it specifically pertains to the prosecutor asking for information in her case to move forward, her consciousness of guilt, etc.
Those are evidentiary issues, counsel.
Correct, but
which can be dealt with at a later time.
We have new developments coming out of Dedham, Massachusetts in the retrial for Karen Read. Today, a judge has made the decision on text messages between Read and controversial blogger Aidan Kearney, known as Turtleboy. Now, yesterday, that's what we were just showing you. Sparks were flying when Read's defense team interrupted a hearing being held over the release of those communications between Turtleboy and Karen Read. And specifically, they want the communications that occurred between April 8th and October 5th of 2023. And here's why the prosecution wants this data. They believe that it may show a sordid connection between Karen Read and Turtleboy. And now he's been charged with intimidating the key witnesses who testified at her trial, including the McCabe's, the Alberts, the Proctors. But Read hasn't been charged with intimidation. And reportedly, a grand jury declined to indict her on an intimidation charge. But Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, he says it could show her consciousness of guilt. The defense says this is a fishing expedition, shouldn't be allowed in. But now today, a ruling from the judge in the Turtleboy case saying that the Commonwealth in Read's case will be allowed to access cell phone data, pictures, and text messages between Read and Aidan Kearney, which paves the way for the Commonwealth in Read's case to try and get those as evidence for the retrial. But it would be up to Judge Beverly Cannoni if that evidence comes in. And remember, this trial is still on track to begin on April 1st. We have less than 2 weeks to get there. So let's bring back in our think tank. We have with us Bernarda Villalona, Paulette Lofton, and Michael Jafer. Paulette, let me start with you. Are you surprised that these text messages are coming in when there's no allegation of witness intimidation for Karen Read, but they're alleging that perhaps she provided Turtleboy with the names of some of these witnesses that led to his intimidation?
I am surprised. It was very shocking to me. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. Obviously, we don't know what's in those text messages, so it could do nothing to Karen Reed's case. Or if those messages do show that she is telling Turtleboy the names and facts about the witnesses that the state intends to call against her, and there's any conversation about what she would like him to do to stop those witnesses from testifying or picking on those witnesses or bothering those witnesses, then I think she's going to have a problem, especially if they're going to use it for consciousness of guilt. Because if she is truly innocent, she wouldn't need to do any of this, because she wouldn't care what the witnesses were going to come in and say if they were telling the truth, because the truth would set her free. So I think this could be problematic for her.
Yeah, Michael J., give me an example, because apparently a grand jury looked at these text messages already and said there's nothing here to go forward. They no-billed it to go forward with Karen Reed being responsible for witness intimidation. So what's an example of something that perhaps the prosecution can use at this retrial?
Oh, absolutely. Here's an easy example. What I think that they're worried about is, hey, maybe I did something like this, but why would they do this? So she would have some sort of an admission or some sort of a conscience of guilt that's not related to the witness intimidation, but could be relevant to maybe an underlying, fact in her case that she's challenging. Maybe something along the lines of, I wasn't part of that, that, or I wasn't there, or I dropped them off. Anything could happen. But at the end of the day, it is relevant for Hank Brennan to at least be able to see these, because there might be something relevant to her case. It could be relevant to her case, but not relevant to whether or not she was guilty of witness intimidation. And while, I'm in Michigan too, so I'm a huge Paula Lofton fan, I just don't agree that these are not relevant for Hank Brennan. I think they are relevant for Hank Brennan, because at the end of the day, I can tell you, Judge Beverly Canoni has not made any mistakes so far in this case. So put it in her hands. Let her decide whether or not this is relevant to her case. If she decides it is, it is. If she decides it isn't, it isn't.
Okay, so Bernardo, with Turtleboy, we have seen him inside of the courtroom. He's been in the gallery every chance he's had the opportunity to. There he is there during one of her hearings, or he's sitting at his post. Do you think this could be a ploy, and Hank Brennan is just coming out swinging, where he wants to put him on the witness list, bring him in as someone who's a party to this case in terms of being a witness, so that he can't cover this trial? He can't watch the trial if he's a witness and gets sequestered.
Exactly. So if he is put on the witness list, remember there's going to be a sequestration order, meaning that if you are a witness that's going to be called at the trial, you cannot be in the courtroom to listen to any of the testimony. So he will be precluded from being inside of the trial and covering this trial. And remember, it's Turtleboy who actually got a lot of national and media attention for this trial. So if you preclude him from the courtroom because he is a witness, then that's going to take away a lot of the media and a lot of the support that Karen Reed has. So this could be a ploy that the prosecution is using. They know what they're doing. They're going to keep him outside of that courtroom.
So we got to get to another big moment that happened today. That's when the Commonwealth asked in a motion that they want the communications, not just between Karen Reed and Turtleboy, they also want the communications she had with her first attorney, David Yannetti. So here's a listen, or a look rather, at what those arguments are. Basically, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan said that Karen Reed has waived her attorney-client privilege. That's sacrosanct privilege that says you can tell a secret to your lawyer and they're not going to be able to share it. And they say the reason she waived it is because of the interviews that she's participated in, specifically quoting this latest investigation discovery docuseries that's airing on HBO Max, A Body in the Snow, where Reed talks about statements she made to Yannetti not too long after the death of John O'Keefe when she retained Yannetti. We were able to actually pull a clip from that series so you can see it for yourselves.
And then when I hired David Yannetti, I asked him those questions the night of January 29th. Like, David, what if, I don't know, what if I ran his foot over? Or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out? And David said, yeah, then you have some element of culpability.
Paulette, does that waive your attorney-client privilege?
I would like to say no, but I think she is very, very close. I have always thought that the interviews are a very bad idea for someone who is facing a trial. Obviously, potential jurors are watching that. And if for some reason she does at this trial and anything she said on that stand is different than any of the words that she said previously in any of these interviews, that's going to be a problem, and the prosecutor is going to attack her for that. So while I'd like to say that privilege has not been waived, because once that gets waived, that is a slippery slope for all defense attorneys to go down. But I think those interviews really create a problem.
Michael J., for final word before we have to go to a break, she's speaking about that incident, but the text messages and phone call information that they want spans a couple of days from January 29th to February 2nd. Is that going to open up a can of worms in this case?
Yeah, if there was a competition for how much a person hates Karen Read, I would probably win that competition. With that being said, I don't think that these should be. I don't think anything should pervade the attorney-client privilege. And yes, if those calls were admitted, obviously it would expose her for what I think she is, which is she killed him either intentionally or not, but is just trying to cover it up. So it would completely open up a can of worms. But I do agree with Paulette. I don't think anything should. I'm so conservative in that, Julia. I don't think anything should pervade that relationship. I think it should be sacrosanct. As much as I hate to admit it, I actually agree with Karen Read's case in this side and this position.
It is up to Judge Cannoni as to whether or not that is actually going to come in. Think Tank, stand by. We do have to get to a break, but when we come back, another case that had a shocking verdict yesterday and a penalty phase in the military wife murder trial. Plus, she gave emotional testimony during the trial. We have a friend of victim Ashley Henning who's going to join us live to talk about this controversial verdict. Stay with us.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
This video that you're watching was recorded on Ashley Henning's 37th birthday in her home. Her friends decided she deserved to have a birthday party, even though she hated celebrating it. This was in Hardin County, Kentucky. She was celebrating there with her friends and her family. And when they went home that same night, Ashley and her husband Jordan got into an argument that ended with Ashley's life being lost. And security camera footage from inside the home recorded the event. I do want to warn you, this video is disturbing, but it was important evidence at this trial. It's video that's despicable to watch. We didn't loop it. That was Jordan Henning going back and reloading after shooting and killing his wife. He was charged with intentional murder by prosecutors in Kentucky in the death of his wife. And at trial, he took the stand in his own defense, and he described himself as being the victim of abuse at the hands of his wife. He claimed extreme emotional distress in that moment. An extreme emotional disturbance was the defense he put on, and said that it impaired his judgment. This jury took the case, they deliberated for 4 hours, and then they handed down a guilty verdict, not on the murder charge, but on the lesser included offense of first-degree manslaughter. That left many shocked. Many of you who watched this trial, but for the most shock was for the members of Ashley's family, her friends, people who were close to her. During the penalty phase, Ashley's cousin, who said he was more like a brother to her, a Marine Corps Chief Warrant Officer, John Williams, he did not hold back when he expressed his disappointment with this jury's decision.
I have one more thing to say. I've served this country for almost 22 years. 22 years in the Marine Corps. I've deployed 7 times to combat operation, combat zones. 9 times total deployed. And this is the justice that America gives me. It's unthinkable, unspeakable, it's disgusting. Thank you, Joe. Cowards. Every single one of you.
Any cross-examination?
every single one of you cowards.
Not too long after that testimony in the penalty phase, the same jury deliberated again, this time for only 10 minutes, and they came back with the maximum sentence allowed for a manslaughter conviction, and that's 20 years in prison for Jordan Henning. He would have the opportunity for parole after serving 85% of that. And during this trial, during the guilt phase, before that jury came back with their guilty of manslaughter verdict, Ashley's friend, Jamie Savat, took the witness stand. And she had a powerful and emotional moment throughout that testimony, but specifically during cross-examination when Jordan Henning's attorney was asking the questions. And I want you to see a piece of that.
You're on a mission to convict this guy. That's what...
He convicted himself. There's video. He's convicted himself.
You are ensuring, trying to his conviction.
No,
that's
what I want these people, and I know you might not have a heart and understand, but everybody else in this room, I want them to understand the impact that he has had and his actions has had on so many people. That's what I want.
And with us here tonight, Ashley Henning's friend, Jamie Savat, is joining us live. Jamie, thank you so much for being with us. I got to tell you, there were viewers who were watching that, and they said, I hope I have a friend or wish I had a friend like Jamie Savat, someone who is going to stand up for me and try to protect me the way you no doubt tried to protect Ashley's legacy there on the stand. I'm so sorry that you had to watch that video. I could see how difficult that was for you to have to watch again. But tell me about your reaction, not just to this verdict, but in that moment when you were on the stand, what was it like for you having to be the one to speak up for Ashley in that way?
For me, it was just about trying to get the truth out, trying to make sure people understood who Ashley was, who Jordan was, the Ashley I knew, the Jordan I seen. I just wanted people to understand, like, there's so many different sides to a story, but then there's also the truth. And what the defense was doing was trying to spin a story of who Jordan was that he actually wasn't. And that, to me, made me angry because they tried to pin and blame the victim. They wanted to blame Ashley, and Ashley no longer has a voice to stand up for herself. So I felt it was my job as her friend to advocate for her, to advocate for her voice, to advocate for her children, to not let the defense attorney push me around because I'd already heard that, he was hard and, and I just wasn't going to sit by and allow him to do that to me or to sit there and just make a mockery of what's happened to Ashley.
What do you think about the 20 years behind bars that Jordan Henning is now going to have to serve?
The way I think of the 20 years is it's comical, honestly, because in reality, he'll be up for parole in 17. He's already served technically 2. So basically, he'll be up for parole in 15 years. The youngest son that was involved with all this as well, he'll be barely of adult age at that time. His life is completely ruined, but then Jordan's going to get out and start a life. He'll be young enough to still live a full life. That to me just seems unfair, especially when so many lives have been completely ruined by him.
You mentioned something during your testimony, Jamie, where you said you'd had a conversation with Jordan in the past, where he said, if I ever have to hurt someone, I will just claim PTSD because I'm taking testosterone. And we heard about testosterone in this case. We didn't hear PTSD, but we heard EED, extreme emotional disturbance. Did you think that point was going to carry much further with this jury?
I know it may sound horrible, but I know this is going to come really bad, but even as a military spouse, I think the overuse of PTSD and EED and things of that nature are overused for crimes and are used as excuses. I'm not trying to say that that doesn't truly exist. It does, obviously. But to have it as an excuse when obviously there's, in my mind, you're already planning or already thought it through, then that's no longer a valid excuse you can use.
That's a fair position, especially based on what you testified about and what you said the defendant said. He denied that that's what he said. He took the stand. I don't know if you expected that he was going to testify in his own defense or not. Was there anything or any point during his testimony or his defense case where you were worried that the jury might be believing him?
I wasn't actually shocked that he took the stand. Knowing Jordan the way I knew Jordan, I was expecting him to take the stand because Jordan wants the attention. He wanted to make himself out to be a victim. He wanted people to hear him, see him. He thrives off of that. Like I even said in my testimony, Jordan always was that person. He was very aggressive in your face. And I think this was his last way of trying to be in everyone's face. So I wasn't shocked that he took the stand. It just speaks of who Jordan is. I don't think his testimony was accurate. I think his testimony, obviously, hearing what I've heard through the snippets and stuff after the case, Jordan tried to sell a story that wasn't true. And obviously there were jurors that believed a story. And that's the sad part, is I think jurors believed a story they heard other than actually believing what they saw with their own two eyes.
I know you've mentioned you have some criticism of the jury makeup in this case, and perhaps if that had any impact on it. Can you speak to that and anything that you feel like should have come out in the trial about Ashley that may have been missed?
Yeah, I think the jury makeup was a pivotal part in this case because I think, one, there was a lot talked about his military training and NTC and things of that nature. They made it seem like Jordan was in such, combat and had seen so much and things of that nature, when it's not. If you actually speak to most military personnel who have been to NTC, such as my husband, John, Ashley's other friend, Holly and stuff, they laugh at NTC. Is just a place people don't want to go because it's hot. It's not because it's necessarily dangerous. Most things that happen at NTC is due to the negligence of others. It's not due to the fact that it's so detrimental on your mental capacity. Like it's not that. So I wish that there would have been more talk about his actual training because he's never been in combat. He was never exposed to combat. And as far as Ashley, I wish the jury and everyone would have got to know Ashley and heard more about who Ashley was as a mother, who Ashley was as a family and a friend, who Ashley was to her children, and just to the people within her own work, how she stood out. Because the thing is Ashley's spirit and who she was is so beautiful. Like she was the kindest person you honestly would ever meet. She didn't meet people that she was mean to or straight, like she just had this joyous vibe about her that everywhere she went, she lit up a room. And she loved her children fiercely. Her children were her world. Her children, she evolved around her children.
Jamie, thank you so much for sharing that. Our viewers have wanted to know more about this story. They've been, many of them, shocked as you are about the verdict, but we appreciate your time in sharing that with us and just being an example of a great friend. And our condolences, of course, with you and with Ashley's family. I do want to bring in our think tank before we go to break just to react to the Henning case because we all watched along. We've been analyzing the case for a couple of weeks now. Bernardo Villalona, Paulette Bluffton, and Michael Jaffer are still with us. And Bernardo, I want to start with you. Were you shocked by this verdict, seeing all of the evidence that you saw?
I think that this may have been a compromise verdict, meaning that all the jurors thought he was guilty, but they couldn't agree as to the top count, and that's why they may have compromised and found him guilty of the lesser count, as reflected at the time of sentencing, where they maxed him out on that lesser count.
And Paulette, there has been criticism of why more couldn't be said inside of the courtroom on Ashley's behalf because all of the evidence that came out on the defense's side about this alleged abuse came from the defendant on the stand. So, of course, Ashley can't take the stand to defend herself. Can you walk our viewers through what that looks like legally, where you can't just come in and have good character witnesses for a victim?
That's correct. You cannot. And that is difficult for a jury to understand. I was very, very shocked by this verdict as well. I think the reloading of the gun, in my experience trying these type of cases, usually a jury thinks that time where you're going to get more ammunition and reloading a gun should be enough time for you to come back to your common sense. But here we see that a jury fully believed that he was still in that emotional state. I agree with Bernardo. I think it may have been a compromise.
This was such a difficult one. Everyone, thank you for weighing in on this. And thanks to everyone on the Think Tank for being with us on this Friday. Bernardo Villalona, Paulette Lefton, and Michael Jafer. We will see you again very soon. Don't go anywhere, though. When we come back, we're going to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Plus, coming up in the next hour on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, a loving father of two who was just getting over a nasty divorce was gunned down in his own driveway in 2014. His ex-brother-in-law, a former shot girl, and two hired hitmen have already been convicted in the conspiracy. And now Dan's former mother-in-law also charged in the conspiracy. Was her motive Dan's divorce? We investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
We believe the glove was his.
It was a setup.
They weren't fitting him.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
Welcome back. It's now time for us to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Today in the toxic roommate murder trial, two witnesses said they heard the defendant, Nichole Rice, confess to the murder of her roommate, Anita Knutson. Knutson was found stabbed to death in the apartment she shared with her roommate, Nichole Rice, in June of 2007. And no arrests in the case were made for 15 years. This became a cold case, despite evidence that the murder was committed by someone with access to the home. And now Rice is on trial for murder. Today, Rice's ex-boyfriend and a former friend told the jury they heard Nichole confess. Listen for yourself.
At this house party, do you recall people talking about Anita's death?
Yeah, so we were playing video games and we were sitting on the couch, and Nichole and I were sitting on the couch, and a couple buddies were playing video games, and someone from the kitchen was talking about it, and that's when it was stated, the comment.
When what was stated?
The comment was that from Nichole Rice, it was that she had did it, that she had killed Anita.
Nichole said that?
Yes. I gave my statement, same thing I just stated now, and that was the end of it. And then I just kind of cut all ties with Nichole completely.
And why did you cut ties with Nichole?
I'm in the service, was in the service at the time. I didn't need any of that.
At this house party, do you recall people talking about Anita's death?
Yeah, so we were playing video games, and we were sitting on the couch, and Nichole and I were sitting on the couch, and a couple buddies were playing video games, and someone from the kitchen was talking about it, and that's when it was stated, the comment.
When what was stated?
The comment was that from Nichole Rice, it was that she had did it, that she had killed Anita.
Nichole said that?
Yes.
Testimony in this case continues on Monday morning. You can catch that right here on Court TV. I do want to show you a picture, though, before we end this hour. It's of a missing child. This is Jasley Rowland. Jasley is 16 years old, and she was last seen on March 11th in Springfield, Massachusetts. If you have any information about where Jasley may be, call the Springfield Police Department at 1-413-787-6302, or you can always call 1-800-THE-LOST. Let's see if we can get her to a safe place tonight. That's all we have time for here on Closing Arguments, but don't go anywhere. We have a lot more ahead. Another hour of live true crime coming up on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Good night.